Hey guys, welcome to the LT Brings the Heat podcast. We're your hosts, Sean Laird and Adam Heisler, where we talk about baseball and sports performance. With topics ranging from coaching, business, and player development, our goal is to bring you a no BS approach to development in baseball and sports performance. Hope you guys enjoy. Let's rock and roll. Hey guys, welcome to the episode of LT Brings the Heat. We're your hosts, Sean Laird and Adam Heisler. We got a special guest today, South Alabama alum, Korey Hall. How you doing today, Korey?
Doing great. Thank you guys for having me. Sean and Adam, always good to hang out with some Jaguars, getting back to the college days. But my name is Korey Hall, Regional Tournament Director for Perfect Game in Deep South area. We cover Alabama, Mississippi, the Panhandle of Florida, Louisiana, trying to get into the Sterlington area. We're covering all those areas, and I run the tournaments and showcases that are based in those locations.
Awesome stuff, man. And it's I know we go personally, us in the Indiana Bulls organization, we're always going to Perfect Game tournaments and stuff like that. We're actually going to go, and we talked to them right before we popped on to the Perfect Game National Elite in Hoover. And I personally have never been to that. We've been to Atlanta a million times, but I'm really excited about that. Can you kind of run us through kind of like your day-to-day operations, like kind of what you do and how, like exactly how you go about your day when you're running in the tournaments? Because I know obviously last year in summer, everybody was running around with their head cut off with COVID and trying to get organized, trying to find fields and all that stuff. Kind of run us through what your day-to-day is working with Perfect Game and organizing tournaments.
It's definitely a lot goes in. Probably the more people think when you're putting together a tournament. First off, venue is a big thing. Locking down those fields, seeing how many fields that you have for that given tournament. A tournament like the 17U National Elite, we want the best of the best when it comes to venues that we're using. So we want, good fields that are close by, so we can have scouts and travel for all the teams that'll be, minimal. So we'll use, usually once we get that lined out, we cap the tournament around 64 teams. So we'll start putting pools together, seeding out those teams, making sure that we have a competitive balance and making sure that the tournament goes as seamless as it can from that point of view. You're getting the best teams to kind of make it through, but we also want, good competition for everybody.
Yep.
So whether, making sure that's all balanced out with schedule requests, teams traveling in. So we try to get that all hammered out the best we can to try to make everybody happy in that sense. Whether you're coming in from Indiana and you can't play that Friday morning at 8:00. Get those afternoon games or some back-to-back games, or try to make everybody as comfortable as possible with the schedule. Once that happens, there's a lot of equipment that goes into it. Each field having a stalker radar gun, an iPad, a scout there at every single field. So we have guys that score the games, put in the velocity, so people at home back in Indiana can keep track of the games, and even coaches right now, which is a big thing that we're going to talk about later. So we have those velocities so coaches and parents and fans can follow along and see how hard a guy's throwing and see if they're getting outs or see if guys are getting hits. So getting that staff together is huge. Making sure we get good people that are trained and ready to go out there for us and score those games. And after that, once you get in the nitty-gritty of teams showing up and getting going, it's just a lot of watching and talking and making sure that the tournament's going smooth, whether we have some minor issues here and there. But the main thing is getting that staff going, getting that schedule out there and making sure that everybody's good with it and making sure that the umpires get it, the trainers get it, our gate staff, and everybody's on the same page. So there's a lot of communication, but the more organized that we can be and the more that we can communicate, seamlessly throughout, the better the tournament seems to go.
That's great stuff. I'm so glad you hit on that because I don't think people understand how busy you actually are. So we talk pretty much weekly, and I think now more than ever, maybe this in January is kind of more of your downtime. But after that, man, you're busy from February all the way to November. And so it's so cool that you've got to cover kind of what goes on behind the scenes because I think everybody's so quick to judge of, man, I could run a tournament. This can't be that hard. Let's just get teams together, umpires, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's why Perfect Game gets recognized as a top organization is just because where it starts at with you guys being organized. And that's something that can't go overlooked. Korey, kind of dive into just how you got the Perfect Game. Like after I know you left South Alabama, can you kind of give us a background of what happened and what kind of led you to work for Perfect Game?
So after I left South Alabama, I went straight to coaching junior college at Alabama Southern with Daniel Head. Really, I loved it. It flew by 3 seasons there, recruiting, staying on the road, just really kind of diving into that world. I mean, we had a big emphasis on player. I mean, it's junior college baseball. It's big time player development, molding just not only players, but men. I mean, you're with them every single day. I mean, you're talking assistant coach, you're going study hall, weight room, recruiting, game day, field crew. And so you're kind of doing a little bit of everything. And with Coach Head, it was instrumental, learning from him, because he did a lot more than just he was very good baseball mind. I learned a ton from him on the field, but I learned so much off the field, day to day with making schedules and lining up practice and even the players behind the scenes and what they needed, school wise to move on to the next level. And he put such an emphasis on making sure that kids got in the right habits. A lot of the same stuff that Coach Calvi did at South Alabama. There's 0 misclass policies, and they didn't give any leeway to outside the classroom, and made sure it translated to the field. And so I kind of took that to the way that I operated as well. Took care of off the field, and it kind of translated to on the field. Some of the stuff that maybe I didn't do so well while I was in college or when I was younger. And so that was huge. And I think that was going back to junior college and learning from, guys that have been there and done it before. That meant everything, to where now at Perfect Game, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes, and it kind of prepared me for that and gave me a good work ethic. But after that, I coached junior college. I started the summer ball circuit. I went out to Vail, Colorado, coached a collegiate summer team there, and I had a blast. And then that next summer, I got an email about junior college coaches going down to Fort Myers and coaching for a Perfect Game. So went down there to Fort Myers, and I pretty much never came back. I loved it. I did a little bit of everything. I saw kind of the grind. It takes a special person to work in the baseball industry, whether it's Perfect Game or any kind of tournament organization. It's a lot. Like we were saying, a lot goes into it, more than people see. So I kind of knew what I was getting into. I wasn't too shocked when when we worked, as much as we did. But it's satisfying, and I wanted a job in baseball. I mean, that's kind of the goal for a lot of athletes or people that love sports. They want to work in sports, and those jobs are hard to come by. So I'm definitely fortunate. But once I went down to Fort Myers, I got offered a job and trained in Atlanta, moved down to Fort Myers. I was in Fort Myers for 2.5 years. And I think my path was a little bit different than some people, because I did get to have that part-time when I worked for Perfect Game that summer in Fort Myers when I wasn't full-time. So I kind of knew what to expect when I got into it. And then once I started working with Perfect Game, when I moved down to Fort Myers, my office was right beside Ben Ford's. Ben Ford's our national vice president of development, and he's also Jerry Ford's son, who founded Perfect Game. So it's you kind of got to see how and hear about how the company started, the values. And one thing that I love, just like the people that I work for, and Mark Calvi and Daniel Head, Ben Ford wanted to be the best and wants to be the best. And he works his tail off and is constantly trying to make sure that Perfect Game is on the forefront and doesn't cut any corners, and wants to do everything he can to make sure that, his family's business is the best it can be. And I love that about him. And I loved working for him because he had those values, and there was never any gray area that oh, we're going to, do this or do that. It was always not what's the best? What's the best thing we can do for the teams? What's the best thing we can do for the kids? If we're going to run an all-star event, we want to run it, the best we can, make sure that everything was just at such a high standard. It's always fun to see that. And Jerry Ford and the Ford family, it's a special group of people that had a goal for kids. The company started in Iowa and had a goal for kids to start. They played their baseball during the summer, and he wanted them to get more exposure for colleges and to have a chance to play in front of more coaches, and it grew into what it is now. And I don't think, I think they're really, I think everybody here is really in it for the right reasons. And, it kind of gives me that extra push to make sure that it stays that way.
Absolutely. One thing, Korey, that I like, and we go to a lot of perfect game tournaments, like I mentioned before, and we enjoy them. And one thing what I think that our listeners would like to listen to and kind of hear from is, what are some of these tournaments or some of these showcases or something that's really important for guys to kind of go to, and that maybe we'll play along? And can you kind of veer off and talk about how that plays into rankings for certain age groups and stuff? Because I know there's a lot of questions like, hey, coach, like, should I go to this showcase, that showcase? What are some of the big tournaments? Because obviously NAIA Bulls, we've been around for a long period of time. We want to go to the best tournaments possible. And there's other organizations that want to do that as well. What are some of those tournaments and some of those showcases that you feel is most important that Perfect Game runs?
I think to answer that question the best way, all of our tournaments, anything you play in that's a Perfect Game national event, and I'll say that the big ones obviously are the WWBA, the Elite Championships in Hoover, the World Series in Sanford, and also the BCS in Fort Myers. And so those kind of have the most scout coverage. But the thing is, just like professional baseball or high school baseball, I guess you never really know who's watching. So even all of our events, we try to have, especially our national events, we have scout coverage, and they're roaming around watching and checking. And so you can be seen and be ranked at any national event. And as soon as that pops up, our back end, and we go through and we discuss player rankings all the time, and even a guy that plays in one event can be ranked. But obviously the high-end events, the national showcase, the Perfect Game national qualifiers, those are all big-time invite-only events, and that can play into rankings as well. The main event that we have coming up in December, that's always a cool one because it is a huge volume of kids, and it is at the Red Sox spring training facility, which is great. It's a Fenway replica, so the kids get to hit BP on Fenway and then see where it goes on the Monster, and it's really cool. But it's also a time for our staff. There's about 60 of us full time to see each other and spit ideas off each other and talk about baseball and see all those kids. And so everybody's there, so those kids are getting outstanding coverage. But there's a lot that goes into the rankings, not only tournament but showcases, and even during the spring, our guys will go to high school games. So I mean, there's a lot of ways to climb the rankings or even get on the radar.
Yeah, and I think the coolest thing is just, so before I headed down to coach with the Knights in Fort Myers, I was able to log in with the Premier account and look at basically build scouting reports of pitchers I knew we were going to face, and just how accurate those readings were. It was just so cool that you guys keep up with this stuff. And that way parents are getting what they're paying for, as well as college coaches, even either people that just want to look up who are the best players in the country at this age group. Let's go check them out. You can see video of them. You can see their numbers. You're seeing their improvements from year to year. So I think it's such a cool thing that you guys are able to keep up with all of this stuff so they can see their progression, but also college recruiters, especially in this day and age with COVID going on, are able to access this information to keep track of guys, as opposed to maybe getting that in-person viewing of them. So with that news kind of coming this year with COVID kind of messing with everything, how has that really affected the way, I guess, college recruiting is going, and how important has Perfect Game been a part of kind of linking the two together?
I would like to think that we're doing that we're helping a ton with the college coaches and trying to get them exactly what we see. One of the big things that I got a lot of feedback from is our national showcase, our junior national showcase. The live streaming has been instrumental. The views have been crazy. I think before the junior national showcase, my phone was blowing up. I mean, from all types of coaches, from junior college to Division I to the best of the best. And I guess you would say the SEC is one of the best conferences in college baseball, subjectively, but there's a lot of good programs out there. But our phones were all blowing up. How's it going to be? Are you guys going to live stream it? Are you guys going to get this angle? Will there be velocities? And there was a ton of questions going into it. And I think that our coverage of those showcases, which is actually we're replaying it for the next 11 days, so people can go back in and watch whenever they want to. But I think we really blew it out of the water with the quality. Everything was high definition. We had the open view of the players' swings. We had the behind home plate of the players' swings, so you could see where the ball is actually going. I mean, for the pitchers, we were right behind the mound. I mean, we had the TrackMan readings on the scoreboard for all the scouts. So I mean, my phone afterwards, I didn't hear much from the coaches during it because they were all locked in. And then afterwards, my phone started blowing up again, just like, you guys, I mean, that was outstanding. Like, it was perfect. We got to see what we needed to see. We got a lot from it. And you started to see players are still committing and getting looks. It seems like as smooth as it ever has been. I don't know if it's still a lot of high-profile guys that you kind of see, but I think everybody that was in our events is getting equal amount of exposure. I think it's been really, really good. I mean, the programs that I'm closest to, I mean, I still see them getting good players, getting the information they need. I mean, I know they want to be out there watching them and seeing them. Not only and even to see how they interact in person to person. I mean, that's huge. I stopped by South Alabama for just a second during the fall, and Coach Calvi and his staff were doing Zoom meetings with players and showcasing, doing visits that way. And it's just crazy to see that's where we're at. But I would like to think that Perfect Game is trying to make that recruiting process as seamless as it can be during these times.
Yeah, and when it comes to recruiting, I mean, obviously last year with COVID, I mean, it was we were all just trying to figure things out. It was the first time anybody's ever gone through that. We're trying to get things done the right way. Social media was such a big deal, tweeting out videos and sharing info and metrics for guys. I know some of the tournament directors and some of the guys I talked to, they talked about using Synergy. Do you guys use Synergy at all in certain tournaments or certain invites?
We do not. We don't use Synergy. I think we did the live streaming, and we used a lot of those type of tools with the showcases and the profiles. We tried to use as many platforms as we could. I think the biggest one that we just tried to implement during COVID was just the live stream of trying to get as much video and as many games out there as possible.
Yep, and somebody mentioned that to me, and I had not heard of it at the time, and looked it up a little bit. And it's obviously still fresh, and it's kind of growing a little bit, but it's good getting clips of guys and getting short clips and kind of seeing the metrics from there. I kind of want to go back a little bit back to the rankings, because I think this is important for people to hear, because as you guys know, with baseball parents, they kind of don't understand rankings and why things work the way they do sometimes. So could you kind of break down for us, Korey, how Perfect Game, let's take attack pitchers right now, like how you would break down pitchers for rankings? What are you looking for the most? What's the most important things? And obviously go into the hitters as well, position players.
I'll say that as far as the rankings go, I know that parents and fans can why is this guy ranked so high? Mm-hmm. Why isn't my player or my shortstop ranked higher? You see guys on a regular basis, and the rankings are hard. I mean, they're very hard. And we have I'm obviously a tournament director for Perfect Game, And Perfect Game gives me a voice to voice my opinion on players that I see. I'm a part of all the internal talks, but I mean, we have a scouting department that those guys, they dive in, and that they don't run tournaments. I mean, their whole thing is scouting. Yep. And our vice president of scouting, Greg Sabers, is very, very detail oriented and looks into these players a lot. And I would say to people that you said start out with pitchers. I mean, the pitchers, you definitely start with I would say the eye popping of the velocity. I mean, you look at the velocity, and that's not the end all be all, but it definitely catches your attention when you see a kid like I think a 25 maybe grad in Connor Griffin throwing 80, 85, 86. I mean, that definitely catches your eye when you see those numbers. And we don't rank guys based on velocity. If we did, that would be really easy. You would just line them up 1 through 10 and throw it out there. So it's definitely not that easy. I mean, we have guys, Chase Petty throwing 100. Chase Burns 99. Those guys. I mean, they're right there in the rankings. The guy Andrew Painter. He doesn't throw 99 or 100. Now, he does throw 96, but we feel like at Perfect Game that Andrew Painter has the best arsenal of pitches and can pitch the best and has a good feel of that 3-pitch mitts, unreal changeup, good breaking ball. And that's kind of what goes in. We look at the numbers in the elite tournaments of how guys do at Jupiter, how guys do at the WWBAs when they face the best competition. But it's not all velocity oriented. I mean, just like a major league team. I mean, we would try to look at what a guy's out pitch is, how many, is he throwing strikes? What's the results? Is he getting hit hard? Is he winning games? All that would factor into it. I think Perfect Game. It's all that I really can know when it comes to these prep rankings is how we do it. And I think that it's just a lot of watching guys over and over and over again. I'm trying to think. Carter Holton's a perfect example. He's a left-handed pitcher out of Georgia. He's committed to Vanderbilt. Throws really hard. But some guys, weren't sold on him coming into the summer. Obviously, as far as our rankings goes, we got to decide, kind of if, hey, is this guy a Perfect Game All-American? Well, we watched him. We watched him in Hoover. We watched him at the WWBAs. He was just showed that he's a lights-out guy. He's throwing strikes, throwing fastballs by people. The breaking ball was plus, and everything told us like, hey, that guy. He's definitely one of the top pitchers in the country, All-American. And that's just kind of, we used our eyes for that to go out and check him out as many times as we could to get as many looks as we could. But that's just one example of somebody, even though he was a big time committed to Vanderbilt, we still wanted to see more, and he showed us that. So that's always huge when you get your eyes on guys personally.
Yeah, and it's so super cool because it sounds like you guys both use the numbers as well as use your eye test as well. So it's not just – there's no exact science to this. We all know we have hits, we have misses, and there's some guys we project to be the next Bo Jackson, and then he never makes it past college. It's just there's no exact science to this. So I'm glad to hear that you guys have your own scouts of, yes, we can track his velocities and spin rates, but we're also going to watch him compete against the best of the best in that lineup a couple of times a year, as opposed to, I saw that guy 1 inning last year. He struck out 3 in a row. He needs to be placed as the 25th best player in the country. So there's more that goes into it just than this one-time thing. You got to discuss the pitcher's aspect. What about a position player aspect? What are they looking for to get these high rankings? Are these guys usually the biggest, strongest, fastest kind of guys that are going to be more on that top echelon?
I would say that, the showcase is definitely I would say the showcase is more factor into the hitters. We love to see those hitters at our showcases, not only to see their hitting, but also you're not really ranking hitters per se, but you're ranking position players. So, you got to have not just the bat, but the glove and the athleticism, like you were saying, the bigger, faster guys. But if you look at the top end of our position player rankings, a guy that jumps into my head, Benny Montgomery, he can do it all. It's got the outfield arm that we see. He's got the fastest 60 time. I mean, he's also got plus bat speed. And you just see balls just jump off his bat different when he's in a showcase environment or even a game environment. And then when you talk about the game environment, a guy like Elijah Green, to where he's just hitting in every elite tournament that we had, where it's just undeniable his power. He hit a home run, I want to say, in just about every elite event that we had this summer. I mean, it was really impressive. And not only our events, but we also covered East Coast Pro. Went and watched him play there. We checked out how he did at Area Code. I mean, our events obviously are huge, but we have eyes and ears at all those events to kind of see how guys do. Hitters, I would say, when you see them in a showcase and you see them in batting practice, you can kind of gauge their power and their strength. But seeing them in game, you get to analyze their mind, right? You get to analyze the pitch, their pitch recognition, their kind of approach to what they have. Because I mean, just like watching your team, Adam. I mean, you're seeing guys. What was their approach against 96 miles an hour when they're facing Riley Stanford? I mean, that's a lot different approach than taking 10 swings at a showcase. So it's good to see both sides.
Absolutely. We mentioned it already before about how hard it is to run tournaments, and I would never want to be in that situation. So I respect a lot of what you do already from that aspect of things. But what would you say is the hardest thing of being a tournament director? I mean, I know you got to schedule and you got to take care of people and constantly, and I know it's, trying to get the best teams to make sure that they're playing good competition. In your situation, what's the hardest thing about being a tournament director?
I would say, I mean, scheduling is very, very hard. It takes a lot of time and a lot of attention to detail when you're making a schedule. Staffing is a lot. It's a thankless job. I mean, Everybody just expects when they show up that, hey, we're going to have umpires and we're going to have a trainer and we're going to have a diamond cast worker. And when those guys all show up, everything's fine. Everything's good. When those guys don't show up is when, stuff really hits the fan. So the challenges, it's tough. The hardest part would be when there's weather. Yeah. That is extremely tough. Everybody wants immediate answers, what's the plan? And so it's a high stress situation where we're trying our best to make sure that we can get that information out as quick as possible. I mean, I'm on site. I mean, I realistically 100% of the time, first pitch to last pitch. And so it's because you just never know what could happen out there. I mean, with the weather being unpredictable, any kind of situations that could arise. I mean, let's be honest, with rules or fans or with coaching situations, you never know what can happen. So you're always out there trying to make sure that the tournament runs smooth. I think coaches like that. They see the tournament director out there and can hear, if he has a question, he can hear it from me rather than somebody else that he doesn't know or doesn't have a relationship with. So I think it's important to be out there and build relationships with these coaches. And I think, the coaches and some of the organizations working with organizations a lot of times make things so good. I mean, this past year kind of running everything in Hoover, along with Greg Barnett, and Greg Barnett he's been here in Hoover before I got here, and he had a great relationship with a lot of these guys. And now I'm kind of easing in there to me and him kind of working together. And it's just big to get the respect of the coaches and kind of to where they feel good calling you and asking questions, and they respect kind of your answers. So,
that's that for me, the communication thing, when you said that, that's a big deal. And I'll be on, I'm not knocking on anybody here for this story, but about 5 years ago, we were at a Perfect Game tournament and it was raining. We just started warming up and it rained. And we were sitting down for 45 minutes and it wasn't the tournament director. It was whoever was running that field comes down and says, "Hey, we're starting right now." And then the umpire, he didn't say it to me, he said it to the umpire. So I'm in the middle of almost in a fist fight with this umpire trying to start us in literally 60 seconds. And I got my USI commit down the way and he's just now starting to warm up on long toss and stuff. So like right there, I mean, when it comes to running tournaments, and that was a random, weird, crazy situation that's happened. It's happened a couple different places, not just obviously Perfect Game. That's something for me as a coach. Like my number one thing is like, hey, let's make sure our guys have plenty of time to warm up. Let's make sure they take care of their arms. Let's do the right thing. So for me, communication, like you said, from the tournament director, like I feel like there's one less thing I got to worry about, and I can feel more relaxed when I know that we're going to be taken care of from that director, and we have plenty of time to warm up and take care of all those things. So that communication, to me, I'm on the same page with you. That's such a big deal.
Absolutely. I know exactly what you mean when you got the pitcher warming up and the rain's coming or the rain starting. And the umpires can sometimes, and us, I mean, as tournament directors, they want the game starting, right? We want those games starting as soon as possible, so we can get on to the next one. But player safety and getting that pitcher, making sure there's ample time for the pitcher to warm up is absolutely, instrumental. And as we can communicate start times. And we had a situation just this past Jupiter where obviously every arm there is big. It's a big opportunity for the player. And the rain was bearing down on us. I mean, you could see it coming, and everybody was out on the field ready to start. And this coach was like, "Hey, man, like I don't want to get my pitcher loose. Like it's about to storm." But obviously, it's not raining right that second, so. It's kind of like, so, I mean, we talked and made the decision to just, hey, let's sit everybody down and just wait it out. And sure enough, the rain came, that guy didn't get loose. And so we waited out, stormed, and then that guy was able to get, ample warm-up time and was able to have a good start that night.
Yeah, I'm so glad you were able to cover that because we talk about all the time on here is just control what you can control. And the weather is one thing nobody can control. So everybody in this operation is doing the best they can to look out for player safety, but also to get these games in because everybody wants to play. And so I think a lot of times people get so confused of why we're doing certain things. And it's just you just got to bounce ideas off each other and going back to the communication and building relationships. And that's one thing you do very well, just whether it's in person or on social media, interacting with organizations. And it's not that you're having this good relationship with these guys. So now they're trusting you and you're going to put their teams in the right position, whether it due to scheduling or in certain hotels, whatever it is. So one thing I'm sure you get a lot of complaints about when stuff doesn't go right. I want to kind of change the narrative. And have you received emails from people about how successful the tournament was ran or how impressed they were with the way you ran things? Because I think that's one thing that gets overlooked just in the world is everybody's so easy to complain about stuff or, hey, you should have done this. But on the other end, how many times are you getting those positive emails?
Absolutely. It always feels good to get some positive reinforcement, no matter what industry you're in, but especially in ours when there is so much. There's a lot of I guess the door's open for criticism sometimes in this business. But I think anytime competition's great, whether it's on the field or in business or anything, but when you're trying to do your best and really putting all your energy into being the best version of yourself, whether it's running a tournament and making the tournament the best possible, I think that you're so 100% focused on that you can't really worry about what everybody else is doing. And so with my job, people will come back to me and say, "Oh man, you do get those emails that say, hey, great tournament, great facilities, great job on the schedule." Because schedule, and even not just the schedule, but the format of the tournament, how many teams move on to the bracket play, how many consolation teams go to the consolation games. All that's everybody does it different. And anytime you can put on a good tournament to where the kids have fun, not only that, the parents enjoy it, the coaches. I mean, anytime you get any feedback that people, it feels good. It feels like you're doing, you're working towards that end goal, and you're doing something that people enjoy. And I kind of had a meeting when I was talking to our whole staff, and we work so hard and put in so many hours and put in so much time to these tournaments. I mean, man, it would really be a bad feeling if we did all that and didn't run good events. So it's big time to get a little pat on the back every now and then, because if we're going to put in all this time, all this effort, all this stress and everything, we at least want there to be a good product at the end of the road.
Korey, one thing I want to ask you that I think everybody's wondering, and obviously we can't control what the government does and the decisions that are made, but what kind of precautions, or how are you guys treating this spring, summer, early, late summer, with the COVID pandemic still kind of going on? And like, what's the plans? Are you guys going to do anything different than you did last year when you kind of had to do everything like on the hop and last second? But also, like, are you really positive and pretty positive about how everything's going to go going into the spring?
It's a great question. Personally, I'm optimistic. I'm positive that we're going to get back to normal. Obviously, we're going to abide by any rules and any guidelines as long as we can play baseball. So whatever that is, we'll adapt like we did last summer. And last summer we ended up, at least, obviously in Hoover, we ended up getting everything in and having fans and having a good summer. Hopefully we can relax a little bit this summer. I think that's what we're all hoping for, is that we can kind of let our guard down a little bit, but we got to be safe and we got to be smart. And I think that a lot of this stuff's just kind of ingrained in kind of the way we live now, is to social distance and be careful, just of who we're around and the crowds and things like that. But hopefully we can get back to normal. I don't know what's going to happen. I hope that's the case. I hope we can get back to, I'll tell you what I really want, I think everybody wants, is for college coaches to be able to get back out there. The tournaments just weren't the same. I know I talked with Adam, and even, the Indiana Bulls coming to the 17U Elite. If college coaches are able to get out and recruit this summer, it's a game changer for the environment. For us, it's just, I think that we just love the spectacle of it. Just seeing all those schools out there and all those guys and them being able to, and the kids, the kids look around and they see all the scouts, and it just puts that much more intensity in the game and makes the games better. And so it's great. People don't realize that the college coaches have that kind of effect on the game, and we appreciate them and we miss them. And so we would love for them to be able to get back out there, because it does raise the stakes and it does make the tournament seem, even bigger than it already is. It elevates it that much more. So that's what we would definitely love to happen. And I don't know if it's going to happen, and I don't think anybody knows for sure, but fingers crossed we can get some college coaches back out there to watch some good baseball.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you hit on that, man, because I love coaching last summer, but that was one thing I was definitely disappointed in, that I wasn't able to be around, because we were all competitors. We played the game when we were playing University of Alabama while we were at South. We're going to get a little bit more jacked up to play those guys, as opposed to maybe somebody interconference. It's just the way we're all built from a competitive standpoint. And I definitely think there's going to be more misses than ever before, just because these college coaches aren't having those hands-on and being able to see them in person and how they interact in the dugout. Not necessarily what they're always seeing on the field, but what kind of teammate are they going to be when they can really put the hawk eyes on them and watch them the whole time. So I think after talking with Calvi, when we had him on here, he mentioned that unfortunately this year or two is probably going to be one of the times where they're going to have more misses at each school than they ever have before, just because you don't exactly know 100% what you're getting. You're just trusting guys that you have relationships with, like yourself or like Sean, and, hey, what kind of kid is this guy? Because I'm not being able to be around him, so I need you to try to be 100% honest with me. Can you kind of touch on that with how important it is? So if a college coach approaches you, and Coach Zuli at Alabama, hey, Korey, like, how important it is for you to be honest with him on your evaluation maybe of a player, as opposed to just, hey, I'm going to say that everybody's great.
That's a good question, man. That's a tough you get put in some tough situations, I guess, when you're evaluating players. I mean, it's part of it. So everybody has their own circle of guys that they'll reach out to and guys they trust. I know a lot of our that's kind of the cool thing about Perfect Game is that if we have guys, you know, our guy in Michigan, our guy in Michigan, and he has a huge connection in that with Michigan and Central Michigan and those junior colleges, you know, in the center part of the country. And then if I see a guy, you know, obviously I'm going to talk to Coach Zuli, I'm going to talk to Coach Calvi. Probably I'm going to say I'll talk to Coach Calvi first.
Yeah.
But no, I'll definitely talk to Coach Calvi, Coach Zuli, and Coach Prothrow now at Eastern Kentucky. Those are definitely my guys. And if they reach out to me, it is very important for us to be honest and tell the truth of how we feel about if a guy's good enough to play there, and just instead of just saying that everybody's good. I mean, I think that everybody does have if you really want it and you really want to play, everybody does have a place and a level that they can fit in at, and everyone's great. I mean, we all, I think every place there's great programs and great experiences out there for them. But those guys, I mean, you put your word on a guy and tell them that, hey, this guy can bat lead off at South Alabama, or I think this guy's going to fit in middle of the order. I mean, if he doesn't, that's kind of a notch on you. I mean, they're going to look back and remember, like, hey, Korey said this guy was a middle of the order guy, and he can't play. I mean, that's kind of the risk you're taking when you call and make a phone call or a text. So it's definitely a big deal, but you just got to tell the truth and trust what you see and how you feel about a player. It's definitely very, very important to give an honest assessment, and maybe hopefully you're right, and hopefully he goes to, you know, South Alabama and turns out to be, you know, they'll be a good player and probably replace a really good player that they already have. So, I mean, that's kind of the goal. So,
yep. And to jump on that, guys, and this is for the listeners, I'm going to be talking to you guys here, is, you know, just going to a Perfect Game tournament or just playing for the Indiana Bulls or Louisiana Knights, that's not going to automatically get you recruited. You get yourself recruited. And there's a lot of guys, especially the last year or two, some parents and some attitudes have kind of changed in the fact of, like, how are you going to get me recruited? And I want people that are listening right now, just because you're playing in a Perfect Game tournament, just because you're at this national invite, just because you're playing for this team, does not mean that you deserve a scholarship. You have to showcase your ability. And guys like Korey, guys like myself, and guys like Adam, we're going to have to be honest, because just like you just said, Korey, is like, you can't put your name on any kid. You have to be able to be 100% confident to know that, like, hey, I think this kid could play at your level at your university. Because otherwise, those guys aren't going to listen to you anymore. Those scouts aren't going to come back and take your word for anything. So that's one thing I think that's really important. And I try to stress, and we talk about recruiting all the time in here, but that's something that people really need to get through their heads. Is like, hey, your tools, your character, how you carry yourself, what you can do against elite competition, not against Jimmy down the street that's going to be bagging groceries in 2 weeks. That is what's most important. So I'm really glad that you said that, Korey, is like, you know, you've got to be able to put your name on a kid, and you have to be 100% confident in it. And you're not going to throw your name around or throw somebody's name around just because you like a kid or there's a ton of kids that I have loved to death, but just couldn't play at a certain level. And I had to tell certain universities, like, hey, I don't think he could play at your level. But
yeah, I'm glad you hit on that, Sean, because I think a lot of people think if they pay this fee to go to a showcase or they pay this fee to be on this travel organization that, hey, what am I getting out of this? Well, you better be ready to showcase something, or you better put up numbers just because you're on this team doesn't mean you're going to get recruited. You can go look at the list when these programs put out the guys that, hey, we have 21 guys going D1. Well, they were the ones that earned that. It wasn't just because they strapped up the name across their jersey, and that's why they got there. So I think that's one thing that's very misunderstood in this of, hey, if I pay this money and every single year and go to the showcase, like, what am I getting out of this? Well, sir, your son runs a 7.860 and he throws 75 and he's hitting exit velocity of 78. I'm sorry. Like, it's just not there. So let's get into the weight room and go on that whole development side versus just paying this money to think that they're getting their return on investment there. So one thing I want to hit on with you, Korey, before we go here shortly is just maybe who are some of the top players that you've ever had at your events or some guys that stood out? Let's just say this past summer, who were some guys that I know you named the one lefty from Vanderbilt, but who were some guys maybe caught your eye and you really weren't expecting them to? Maybe there were some big risers in the rankings.
I'll tell you some of the more impressive guys that we've seen this summer. Pico Cone, a Mississippi State commit from Chilton County High School. I mean, he really just pitched really well all summer. I don't think he lost a game all summer. Lefty, not a huge velocity guy. I think he kind of sits around the high 80s, around the 90 mark, and the ball jumps out of his hand. Really good command. The one that really burst on the scene this summer, the lefty from UMS. I mean, we're all watching him pitch and going out there, and he popped a 96 at National, which was extremely impressive. And that was good to see. Elijah Green has been really good this summer. I mean, he's been hitting the ball, all over the place. James Wood, I'll tell you, James Wood's big time player, big time left-handed bat, and he really took off this summer. Was hitting tape measure home runs. I mean, in all the WWBAs, the Elite Championships, the UBC, the Ultimate Baseball Classic, he was really caught his groove. I mean, at doubles, triples, he's a 6'6" left-handed hitter from the IMG Academy. And he came down, and this guy came down a day early for the Elite Championship. Hand up, I didn't know who he was. His dad walked in, and I was coming off the end of a tournament. I was the only one at the field. His dad walked in my office and said, "Hey, my son just wanted to take some swings on the field. Like, do you mind?" And I was kind of in, sped up at the moment, kind of like in a bad mood. And I wanted to say no. I was like, man, the fields are closed. Like I don't want to like get out an L screen for you. But I was like, you know what? Go for it, man. Like, nobody's out there right now. We don't have games for another 2 hours. Like, go for it, man. Get out there and get some swings in. That's cool. And so he does. He gets out the L screen, him and his dad, and he starts hitting. And I mean, I could hear it from the office. So I was like, oh my gosh. And so I go out there and I watched a few swings, and it was really impressive, just him hitting BP off his dad and putting in a little extra work before the tournament. And I still didn't know the kid's name. And then he literally, we had some games going on that night. I think it might have been 15U. And James sat by the ticket office and asked kids if they wanted to play catch with him, just so he could get some throwing in, before the 17U Elite. And it was just kind of, and then I asked, I said, "Hey man, like, what team are you on? What's your name and watch you this week?" And obviously a lot of people knew who he was. I was just kind of in the dark on that one. But watching him this summer, that was one of the more impressive bats that I saw. But it was fun early in the summer seeing kids we'd never seen before. Even guys off Adam's team, Aiden Moffitt. I mean, that was cool to see him throw up some big numbers at our tournament early in the summer, and then eventually commit to LSU. I think it was that he ended up committing to. That was guys. I mean, I've never heard of him, never seen him, and it was very impressive when we did get a chance to see him. So a very productive summer from that standpoint. And we got to see some younger guys. I mean, some names like Connor Griffin, Slade Caldwell, younger players that we're going to hear their names for a long time. And this was kind of their coming out party this summer, getting on the circuit and getting in some All-American games and putting on a show. I think Connor Griffin won the home run derby out in Oklahoma City. So it's big time. And then getting to know some guys locally. So, see what they can do. I mean, a guy like R.J. Hamilton, very impressive. He's actually one of Hoover's better football players. He's a type of athlete that just kind of catches your eye where you're like, man, that guy's really exciting to watch. And he was uncommitted, and I didn't really know what his ceiling was. It was kind of one of those, it was hard for me to gauge, like, what kind of player is this guy going to be? Well, by the end of the summer, he was committed to Vanderbilt. And so he's going to be playing baseball there, and he's still got 3 more years at Hoover. So he's a big time player to watch, and he's a very exciting player to watch. I mean, he can kind of do it all. And then you got a guy that we got to watch kind of grow, in another Hoover player, Walter Ford, big arm. Was kind of in a closer situation early in the summer where he would just come in and just throw, just blow the doors off, 93, 92. And it was like, wow, this guy's, it's impressive, but we've only seen a little inning stints. And then, there was one night in Hoover where we got 2 big-time matchups, and Walter got the start. And we kind of saw, well, hey, this guy can pitch too, and he can start and do some things there. So, and it's just when I go back through my head and I think of all the storylines of the summer, there's a lot of them. And that's what kind of makes it fun when you look back on the, 2020 summer. Those are kind of from the younger guys to the older guys like James Woods to just those guys in between like Walter and RJ. And I think it's been good for the local players. There've been some really good Hoover players that we've seen, and they're right down the road. We got to see some guys from Helena, got in a lot of XL players. Outfielder Story, I think it's Ryan Story, really good player. He kind of jumped out this summer. Lucas Steele, catcher from XL, big time left-handed bat, really jumped out there. And then you see some guys from, the locally, the Top Gun Baseball Academy. They have a lot of really good young players, a lot of good they have a really good 14U, 15U group, and a ton of fun to watch there. A lot of good players from Oxford High School that are coming up, and can't think of all of them right off the top of my head, but very, very exciting to watch. And it's just kind of those for the local players. I think it's been really huge for them to be able to come up to Hoover and get their names out there as well.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's there's definitely stories on the 2020 summer that we're sit back, and it's going to be since it was such a crazy summer. Like you could sit back, and for me personally, I remember a lot more just because of dealing with all the COVID stuff and some of the good experiences specifically, because it was nice to go out and coach some baseball for sure. But Korey, when we close out here. We kind of asked this with a lot of guys at the end of the podcast, but what's your biggest advice for guys in the high school age division that want to get recruited to stand out when they show up Perfect Game tournaments? Like, what's the biggest advice you have for them that want to be showcased in front of those elite national programs?
Well, I will give this advice, and I feel like that I get in a situation sometimes where players will come to showcases or come to tournaments, and they'll put up some numbers that they think is just like a detriment to their recruiting or their careers or something like that. And I don't think that Perfect Game looks at it that way, and I don't think college coaches look at it that way. If you're a young player and you come to a Perfect Game showcase or tournament and you do well or you don't do as well as you should, and I'll give an example. A player came to a Perfect Game showcase, a shortstop, and he came early on. I think it was his sophomore summer, and he ran a 7.96, and he threw like 76 across the infield. And I want to say that we graded him a 6.5, which I mean, it's not great. I mean, it's not the worst, but it's not great. And some guys, I have to, they wouldn't come back. I mean, they might say like, hey, I mean, maybe I'm just, but he did some things good too. And that's the thing. I think those numbers, they're not the end all be all, but they give you something to work towards and something to push yourself and to go train and to go get better. And that same player is committed Division I right now. He's a 9.5 on Perfect Game. He ran a 6.7 recently. And it's just things like that where, we don't cross players out because of a number. I want to stress that it's not, we never, draw a line through a player because of a number they put up at a showcase or a stat that they put up at a single tournament. I mean, it's a body of work, and we look at what they do well. I mean, if they're a guy that has a really good glove and can field it well, I guess when I want to give, that singular piece of advice is just don't stop or don't get discouraged because of data or a number or anything. I mean, keep striving to work harder and focus on your, make sure your strengths stay strength and make sure your weaknesses turn into strengths. That would be my biggest advice, is just to keep going and don't let any numbers or any kind of negative evaluation to get be that big of a deal, because you can always make it better.
Yeah, that's great stuff kind of to close in on. Hey, one last thing that me and Sean talk about it a good bit on here is just how important it is for parents to compare their own player with other players and what school they're being committed to, or I can't believe this guy got a scholarship from this situation. You brought it up earlier on, just kind of how there's a destination for each player. Can you just kind of touch on how important it is to maybe not always look to the right or left, just to look in the mirror and say, hey, if I'm a Division II player, that's what I am. I can still go get college paid for. I can play college baseball, and I still have an ultimate chance. If I want to play professional baseball one day, I still have an opportunity to, versus this kind of D1 or bust mentality that's really kind of taken off the past couple of years.
Exactly. One thing that we used to say all the time, whenever players would say, what level do you think, what type of player do you think I am? Do you think I'm a Division I player? Do you think I'm a junior college player, or in between? I would always say, well, who's recruiting you? I mean, that's the telltale sign of, kind of what level you're going to play at is, hey, if you think you're a D1 type player, but you're only getting recruited by junior college, I mean, those guys want you, and they're putting, they're putting their time and their efforts into trying to get you to their school. I think that just says a ton. Not only for you got to go to where you're valued. And if you're valued at a junior college program and they're going to, covet you as one of their better players, I think that's the route you should take. And if a guy, I usually try to stay away from my school's names and things like that. But if Nick Fletcher, the assistant coach recruiting coordinator at Huntington, comes up to my son and says, hey, I think you could be the shortstop at our college. I think you could play there. I'm going to say, wow, this guy thinks that, that I can play shortstop at his college, and he sees that in me and he believes in me. Well, I mean, that's a pretty big statement going forward, that I can go there and I already have a guy that thinks that I'm capable of playing shortstop and starting at his college and leading them to championships and their aspirations. Because, I mean, he gets paid to recruit, and that's his job. And if he recruits bad players, I mean, who knows what could happen. So, I mean, they're putting their livelihood into you. So, I mean, if you're getting recruited, there's coaches calling you and they're Division III or Division II, I would say to soak up those opportunities. And that's who covets you. That's where you need to go, is a program that believes in you at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's really good advice right there, man. It's something that, playing at any level is a blessing. Playing at any level shows that, playing college baseball in general, you're at a high level athlete. But Korey, man, I want to thank and appreciate you for coming on, man. There's a lot of good nuggets in here, a lot of good info in here, especially coming from a Perfect Game Tournament Director that sees so much baseball and so many guys coming in and out of the field. And I really enjoyed listening to you talk and kind of break down the process and the recruiting a lot today, man.
No, I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing the Indiana Bulls at the 17U Elite. It's going to be a outstanding tournament. And Adam, I'll see you real soon. I got to make a trip down to Mobile, so I'll see you sooner than later.
We'll see you soon, brother.
Awesome,
all right,
man.
Peace, guys.
All right, man. See you guys later.